Your Excellency, Lady Corder, Chief Minister, wherever he is, somewhere, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, it is a very great honour to be invited to unveil this Liberation statue. It's an honour which I appreciate all the more given that I've now been retired for a year, and this was due to have been the final act of my term as bailiff. So I thank the Committee for Education, Sport and Culture for inviting me back to do this today. I also thank them and their predecessor committee, and I'm delighted to see Matt Fallais here, because I think I really have him to thank, or perhaps the word is to blame, for being here today. I thank the Education, Sport and Culture for commissioning this artwork, and they and all their staff for supporting the project from inception through to today's exciting unveiling. Huge congratulations are due to the sculptor, Mark Cook. Oh, here he is. There you are. Mark Cook, for producing a work of art that I'm sure will be admired and enjoyed by locals and visitors for very many years to come. And I extend that praise also to the students of the College of Further Education who've supported Mark and have been able to incorporate this work and its creation in their own projects and coursework. We are extremely fortunate in this island to have so many talented artists living here and working with us, and they should be very proud of all that they achieve. Thank you. I was excited to see an early version of the statue when it was in production, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the completed work for the first time. I think it very cleverly captures the spirit of liberation in 1945 and the subsequent celebrations of our freedom right up to this present day and continuing. May the 9th and what it means will always have a very special place in the heart of every Guernsey person. For each of us, Liberation Day conjures up many different thoughts, different memories, different emotions that cannot be described in a few words. To see those thoughts, memories and emotions, the very spirit of liberation, portrayed in a single piece of art is, to my mind, an act of artistic genius. And now, I'm out of practice making speeches, you know. I thought I'd given this up a year ago. The sculpture depicts not only the physical act of liberation, but it evokes the many emotions that one associates with May the 9th, 1945, and every Liberation Day since. I expect that each time I look at it, I will see something different or sense something new, and I hope that you and others will feel the same. The statue, as you'll see in a moment, reminds us of the children who were evacuated at such short notice in 1940 and had no idea they wouldn't see their parents again for 5 years. It depicts a soldier who fought to give us our freedom, and in his face he shows he's thinking of the pain and suffering of war. While we mustn't forget the trauma of war, the real essence of the statue is the celebration of freedom. It reminds us how far the island has come in the last 75 and now 76 years. More than that, it brings to life the spirit of freedom, the meaning of liberty, and by inviting us to hold hands, as you will see, with the 4 figures, we become part of it, so that we too can celebrate freedom by sharing in their joy and excitement. The location of the statue here and wherever it may be moved near the harbour is very poignant. So many events happened here. The evacuation, the senseless and unprovoked bombing in 1940, the departure of the deportees, the arrival of SS Vega in December 1944, the coming ashore of the British troops on this day in 1945, all happened within a short distance from here. And of course, our modern day celebrations, slightly different though they are this year, but our modern day celebrations normally so focused on this part of town. So being so prominent, it really is something that's going to be accessible and enjoyed by locals and visitors alike. If it weren't for COVID, and if we had done this last year when we were celebrating the 75th anniversary of Liberation, I might have said, this is one of my happiest and proudest moments as bailiff, and a wonderful note on which to bow out. I still think that, and I thank everyone very much, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Richard, for those kind and wonderful words about the sculpture and that eloquent introduction to what the sculpture's about. When I was first asked to do this, a few years ago now, I was given a very open brief, and that was to capture what liberation means to people today. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, what is the essence of liberation? What is it that we all do on Liberation Day and have done ever since that day in 1945 when the troops came ashore? And for me, it's about being with family and it's about being with friends. So straight away, I decided that what I needed to produce was an image that was about that. So I chose a family, but that family is to represent all families. It's a universal family, no matter what form that family takes. And as you will see in a minute, when the flag is unveiled, there's nods to all sorts of things about the present and the past for you to actually explore and find out. But I also wanted to talk about the future. And as a piece of artwork, in a sense, it is not complete. It is a complete sculpture, but to complete it as a piece of artwork, it needs you, the public, the tourists, the people who come to the island, to actually hold hands with it. And every time that you do that, you will create a new and unique piece of artwork. As you can see, I'm a little bit nervous at the moment, but I do want to actually thank a few people before I finish. And first of all, I want to thank Education, Sports and Culture for actually getting behind this project. I would like to thank Natasha and Colin, who have been in the background all the time pushing this forward. I'd also like to thank my colleagues at the College of FE, who've actually supported me through this, especially Louise Mazalki, Jane Lepedvin and Charlie Towers, who's standing there. Unlike a piece of painting, which I also do, a piece of sculpture like this is different. It has to be sent to somebody else to be cast, so you have to be able to put your trust in those people. And this was sent off to the UK to Sculpture Castings, and again I have to thank Simon, if he's listening, and his team. To get the uniform, which we're about to see correct, I also needed help. So I went to Russell Doherty, who is part of the Reenactment Societies over here, who I know would have liked to have been here, but at the moment he's on the cavalcade working away. But actually, there's 4 people who are here who were really instrumental in me getting this sculpture produced. And they're the 4 models who I managed to con into posing for me when they didn't really know what I was going to be doing. And I'd like to call them up and to take a position to the side of the sculpture, if that's okay. And that's Herika, Harry, Sylvia and Rupert. So I'd like, if possible, for you to give them a round of applause as they come up here. And I have to give them a big thank you. Thank you to you. And now my bit's over, so I can actually enjoy the rest of the day. And I'm going to hand over to Deputy Dudley Owen. Thank you.
Well, happy Liberation Day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud to be with you today at this celebratory unveiling of a long-awaited statue by locally renowned artist Mark Cook. And I'm honoured to be here on behalf of the Committee for Education, Sport and Culture. Thank you to His Excellency Sir Ian Corder and Lady Corder for their attendance today, and also to Sir Richard Collis for the important part that he's played in this memorial statue coming to life. And of course, to the artist and his team, Mark Cook, without whose vision and practical input, of course, this particular artistic commemoration of our island's past, present and future would not have been captured for our benefit, and for that of future generations of islanders. This representation of a Guernsey family is hugely poignant for many of us. The relevance of this piece as a memorial to our history during the World War II as an island under occupation, and the trauma that for many and the consequences of that for our cultural development is significant. It's moving for me to be involved, not just at a political level on behalf of the Committee for Education, Sport and Culture as the sponsor of the piece and the driving force behind it, but also personally, as my immediate family, like others, was so impacted by the misfortunes of the war. We experienced evacuation at the start of the war, deportation during the occupation, and fighting on the front lines at D-Day and in other significant theatres of battle. For me, this is still living memory, having been brought up surrounded by those who were directly impacted. But as those in our community whose personal experience of those times become fewer, for future generations, this important memorial will give them the vital links to events that have helped shape our island's identity. And without further ado, I'll hand back to Sir Richard to do the honourable unveiling. Thank you.
Great. Lovely.
I wonder if, do you want me to...
My background really is, I actually trained as a painter, as a fine art painter. I went to university to do fine art painting, and immediately I left I then did sculpture, completely the opposite. So I spent a long time model making and doing stuff for industry in the UK, but this is possibly the most complicated piece that I've done, because it is 4 figures. So there's a lot of formal difficulties in doing something like that, in making them all interact and getting them all to scale. But I actually conceived it as part of 3 pieces. It's something I've never really talked about to anybody before, but I always wanted and intended, if I could raise the money, to put 3 pieces into St. Peterport. The first one that's gone in is the donkey and foal. Now, not many people have actually asked me why there's a foal there, because of course the motif for Guernsey is just the donkey. But because I saw it as part of a group, I wanted them to talk about aspects of the Guernsey personality. So the donkey and foal is about that nurturing nature of people over here, and education and moving forward and passing on to the next generations. Then the next one, which hasn't quite gone in yet, but is going to go in this summer, is the Victor Hugo statue, which is about openness and the willingness to accept people in, and people come here and make a home of living on Guernsey. And then the third one, which I was always intending to do, but didn't quite conceive it in this way, it's going to be a smaller piece of work, was about family and that very family, social oriented way that people are on Guernsey. With the Liberation Monument, I wanted to do something that was about now, not just about the past. So it had to be about the present, but it also had to be relevant for the future. So I wanted something that became an icon that could be part of an Instagrammable moment, so people could interact with it, and that kind of reflected the family element that's come into Liberation. And actually family became the most important theme of the whole project. The commission came from the Committee for Education, Sports and Culture, and it was a very open brief. They said they wanted something that reflected now, was respectful of the past, but actually talked about the fact that we're now moving into new generations who need to remember, but at the same time have their own memories of Liberation Day. So that was great from my point of view as an artist, because it gave me latitude to do whatever I wanted to do with it. And as I said before, what really interests me is the family, and I wanted to get that family feeling, whilst, as I say, being respectful to the past. Okay, the sculpture itself is made from bronze, and there's lots of processes it has to go through till it gets to the final thing. First of all, many sketches, until it takes a long while to get that initial idea down on paper and to get it crystallised into something that's going to have a story, tell a narrative. Once you've got the drawings done and you've decided what you're going to produce, you then need to see that that works in 3 dimensions. So we always make something that's called a maquette, which is a small model. And that's made just so you can see what it's going to look like in space, because in a 2-dimensional drawing you cannot see that. And then you can play also with that in Photoshop to see how it's going to sit in an area. After that, it's making the thing, and that's a full life-size piece of work. So obviously you've got to con some people into modelling for you, which I managed to do. Took loads of photographs of those, also got those to come into the studio on occasions to check scale and to check the way that it looked. And that's slowly built up over a number of months. Then it's shipped across to England because we have no bronze foundries over here, and then the process is a case of taking moulds off it. From those moulds is created a wax replica in sections. Each of those sections is then cast through what's called the lost wax process into bronze pieces. They all then have to be fitted back together like a jigsaw puzzle, cleaned off, coloured, patinated, and they are time consuming because unlike a lot of products these days which are mass produced, it's still traditional processes that are used to make something like a bronze. So you're talking months to actually put the bronze together. And we were very fortunate in the fact that we did actually get it back on island before the last lockdown, so it was ready for the last liberation celebrations. But like everybody else, as soon as the lockdown hit, it went into its own little bubble, hidden away in a secret little vault on the island. To take it from concept to the final piece was actually shorter than I would normally do for a sculpture of that sort of size, and it was a year really from start to finish. Normally something like that may take 2-3 years in fruition to get it to that point, but it had to be done ready for a certain date, which is great because it gives you a constraint. You've got a deadline, you can't miss it. Having work out there in public space is both frightening and an absolute joy, because unlike a painting that sits in a gallery, that's going to be seen by a few people who are going to go to the museum, whether they're tourists, whatever, or people who are lovers of art. Something that's out in the street, people are going to walk past every day, and you're going to be open for people criticising, loving it, hating it, whatever, but you're always going to get a reaction. So as an artist, that's really stimulating. One of the important things about the sculpture is it is interactive. It's there for people to enjoy and to have their photos taken next to. So it's a group of a family group, and the little girl is holding her hands out, so we're hoping that children will join and make a little chain coming off that, and then the mother on the other side has also got a hand out, so you can make a whole big family chain from it. And we're hoping that it'll be used as that Instagrammable moment, or one of those Instagrammable moments on Guernsey, because of course there's so many really when you get over here. My day job outside of being a sculptor and an artist is actually work at the College of FE as a lecturer, and one of the important things for me that this wasn't just something that I was producing, but it was an educational tool. And hopefully with the historical side of it, because there is a historical aspect, it'll be an educational tool for the future as well. But I managed to be able to get a number of the students to come down and get involved in all sorts of aspects of the project, recording it, videoing it, all those types of things, and also was able to show the students how such a big project was managed, and that art isn't always just about producing something, it's about all the logistics that go into the background as well.